1879. Deadwood Gulch, in the Black Hills of what the map still called Dakota Territory. This story took 10 years to make, and the ending is the kind a man tells once and then keeps to himself. Ethan Hawke rode into town with $8,000 sewn into the lining of his coat. 10 years of killing himself in the silver mines, all to keep a promise, to save his parents from a life of poverty. But when he crossed the final rise toward the ranch, there was no celebration waiting. The horse was dead in the front yard, still hitched to a broken buckboard. On the porch sat his mother, thin, hollow-eyed, holding the family Bible in her lap, and all that money Ethan had sent home month after month for a decade, it was completely gone. Someone had robbed his parents blind, and that someone was much closer to home than Ethan ever imagined. 10 years earlier, in the spring of 1869, Ethan had stood in that same doorway, 18 and tired of being poor. His father Ezra had worked the placer claim on the back 40 for 22 years, and the claim had paid for shoes and flour and a roof that did not leak, and nothing else. His mother Margaret had sold eggs at the hotel in town for what she called pin money, and the pin money had kept the family in coffee and salt pork through the winters. His older brother Caleb had been given the running of the ranch because he was the firstborn and because Ezra trusted him. His younger brother Samuel had been given nothing in particular, because Samuel was the kind of boy who agreed with the last person who spoke to him. Ethan had kissed his mother on the forehead, and she had pressed the Bible into his hands. He had ridden north to the Colorado mines with $12, a rifle, and a letter of introduction to a man named Hollister who ran a stamp mill outside Leadville. She had only said, "Make your fortune, son. We will be right here." The first 2 years in Colorado almost killed him. He worked a pneumatic drill in the silver camps above Leadville for 15 hours a day, and he lived in a canvas wall tent that leaked when the snow came in sideways. The air at 9,000 feet tasted like iron, and his hands cracked open in the cold. He sent half of every wage home to his brother Caleb, because Caleb had written that the ranch needed feed, and the placer claim was playing out. Ethan did not question the letter. He had no reason to. In the 3rd year, he moved to a hard rock camp near Central City and took a contract on a vein other miners had given up on. He worked the vein 9 months, and the vein paid. He bought a quarter share, then a third, then a half, and by the spring of 1874, he owned a working mine of his own and had hired 4 men to run it. He had the mine called the Margaret, after his mother, filed with the county recorder in Georgetown on a Tuesday in May. For 5 more years, the Margaret paid him better than any honest man deserved. He moved to Denver, took rooms at the Windsor Hotel, and hired a clerk named Peterson to handle the books. He sent money home every month by Wells Fargo draft, made out to Caleb at the Deadwood Bank. He never missed a month, not once. Even in the winter of 1876, when the road washed out, the draft had to go around through Sidney, Nebraska, and he paid the $11 in fees without complaint. By the spring of 1879, he had $8,000 in cash in a strongbox under his bed, and a paid deed to a house on Ferguson Street in Cheyenne. He sat at his desk one morning in March, looked at the deed, and understood he had been building a life in a city that was not his, with money that belonged in a place he had not been in 10 years. He wrote to his mother that same afternoon. He told her he was coming home. He sold the mine to his foreman for $9,000 on a handshake and a 10-day note, and he bought the chestnut gelding 2 days later, and he set out on the first Monday in April. The road from Denver to Cheyenne was good. The road from Cheyenne to Deadwood was not. He rode south through Laramie and west into the Black Hills, and the higher he climbed, the colder the air got, and the more he thought about the porch where his mother would be sitting. He had bought a barrel of flour and a bolt of muslin in Cheyenne. In his saddlebags, he carried a thin manila folder with the deed to the new house and a power of attorney his lawyer had drawn up so he could move his parents in without delay. He had not told anyone he was coming. He had wanted to see them the way they were, in their own kitchen, before he became the son who had done well. The house was smaller than he remembered. The chimney had lost a course of bricks. The front door, which his father had replaced the year Ethan left, was warped so badly it would not close. He stepped into the kitchen, and the room smelled like cold grease and lamp oil. His father was in the rocking chair by the stove, wrapped in a horse blanket. He had lost 30 pounds. The cough that had started the year Ethan left had become a sound that lived in the room. His mother came in from the woodshed with an armload of pine that was too wet to burn, and she looked at her son, and she did not cry. She set her hand on the side of his face the way she had when he was small, and she said, "You came back." His father tried to smile and coughed instead, and the cough bent him double. Ethan sat at the table he had been raised at, and he set his saddlebags on the floor, and he asked very quietly where Caleb was. His mother did not answer. She poured him a cup of coffee, and the coffee was mostly chicory because the real coffee had run out in the winter. The smell of chicory sat in the room like a guest who would not leave. Ethan let the warmth of the cup run down into his hands, and he looked at the kitchen. The window over the sink was cracked and patched with muslin. The clock on the mantel had stopped at 4:15. On the sideboard was a basket of letters, and he began, without thinking, to sort them. The first 3 he pulled out were from a doctor in Rapid City, and all 3 had the same dateline cut clean through the middle. The prescription and the dosage were gone. Only the salutation and the signature remained. His mother had not opened them. They had been cut for her. Now think about this for a second. A man sends money home for 10 years. He never misses a month. And the letters from the family doctor have been cut in half so his mother cannot read the prescription. You can make up your own mind what that tells you. He did not say anything yet. He asked for another cup of coffee, carried the basket to the table, and began to read. Under the doctor letters was a stack of bills from a bank in Deadwood, made out to a man named Horace Talbot, each with a foreclosure stamp in red ink dated within the last 18 months. There was also a smaller stack of receipts from the dry goods store, and the dates stopped in the fall of 1877, which meant someone had stopped letting his parents buy on credit 2 winters ago. He went into the front room and found a small leather notebook on the bureau. The first third was recipes and seed varieties. The back 2/3 was a record of letters she had sent to Caleb with a single word beside each entry. Beside the first 60, she had written, "Returned." Beside the last 6, in a shakier hand, she had written only the date. He carried it to the kitchen, set it in front of his mother, and said, "What is this, Ma?" She said, "It is what I sent, son. It is what I sent and what did not come back." He walked the ranch that afternoon while his father slept. The barn had lost 2 stalls to rot, and the chicken house had no chickens. The back pasture, the one his father had worked the placer claim on for 22 years, was fenced with new cedar posts and 3 strands of wire, and the gate had a new padlock on it. The fence was good work. It was better work than a man who could not buy flour could afford. He climbed the fence and walked the pasture to the creek. The placer tailings had been reworked. The ground was scarred with fresh cuts. There was a sluice box under a tarp, and a wheelbarrow with the name Caleb Hawk burned into the handle. He stood in the pasture a long time. He did not go back to the house. He went into town instead and asked at the livery for a horse. The livery man said, "You just got in." He said, "I need to ride to Whitewood tonight." The livery man did not ask why. He saddled the roan and let it out. Whitewood was 12 miles east, and the saloon he was looking for was the 3rd one down from the depot, and the man he was looking for was pouring drinks behind the bar. His name was Marcus Coltrane, and he had been Ethan's friend in Leadville in the 2nd winter, and he had come to work the Deadwood camps 6 years ago and had not gone home. Marcus saw Ethan come in, and his hand stopped on the bottle. He came around the bar and said, "You have to understand, Ethan. He had a hold on me from the day I got into town." They sat in a back booth, and Marcus talked for an hour. Caleb had discovered, in the 2nd year, that Marcus owed a gambling debt to a man in Rapid City who would have broken his legs. Caleb had paid the debt. Caleb had then collected it, with interest in work, in the form of silence about where the ranch money was going. Marcus had signed the checks. Marcus had cut the doctor letters. He had not known until the 3rd winter that the old folks were not seeing any of the money. Ethan did not sleep that night. He rode back to the ranch before dawn and waited in the kitchen until his mother came down to start the stove, and he asked her, as gently as he could, if she still had the Bible. She went to the parlor and came back with it, held against her chest the way she had when he was a boy, and the thunder was bad. He opened it to the page she had been reading the day he left, and between the pages of the Song of Solomon was a folded paper with a red wax seal. It was a deed of sale for the back pasture, dated 18 months before, and it carried the signature of Ezra Hawk, and the signature was not his father's. Ethan had grown up watching his father sign his name, and the signature on the deed was a copy made by a careful man who had not practiced the original enough. He showed it to his mother. She looked at it a long time. She said, "He brought it to me. He said your father had signed it. I kept it because I did not want to believe it was true." Caleb came home at sundown the next day, riding the bay gelding he had bought, with money that should have bought his father a winter of coal. He swung down at the rail, saw the chestnut, and his face changed. He came in with his hat in his hand. "Ethan, Lord, boy, you came back." Ethan did not stand. He set the deed between them. "Tell me about the pasture." Caleb said, "I had to. The doctor. You do not know what the last 3 winters were." "Tell me about Marcus." Caleb turned to his father. "Pa." Tell him I did it for you." Ezra looked at his oldest son for a long time. Then he said, "Saying you love somebody, Caleb, and leaving them to starve, do not go together. You are not the son I raised, and you are not welcome in this house." Caleb put his hat on and walked out. The door did not close all the way behind him. Now hold that. The West ends a lot of families, and it is almost never the gun. It is the door that does not close behind the man on his way out. Samuel came down from the loft that night. He sat and said, "I signed the receipt at the bank. He said he would put you in the poorhouse, Ma and Pa in the ground. I was afraid of him." Margaret held his face. "Then we are done being afraid." In the morning, Ethan drove his parents to the new house in Cheyenne. Ezra coughed in the new kitchen, against a wall that did not leak. In the spring of 1880, Ethan went back to Deadwood. On the foundation of the old Gilman Hotel, he built a 2-story frame house with a kitchen big enough to feed 40. He opened it in November for the abandoned widows. He did not name it after himself or after the gold. He hung a sign above the door that read, "Casa Ezra and Margaret." The wind moved the sign a little in the first snow. No one corrected it. No one ever did. If that story stayed with you, leave a comment with the part that hit you hardest. I read them. Like and subscribe on the way out, and I will see you in the next one.